So now that we're ready to cut our part on the ShopBot, we'll go to the computer that's connected to the ShopBot machine and open up the ShopBot driver. And this is our driving interface. The main tabs that I use are this right-hand side. It tells us our relative position from X and Y 0. And over here we have the ability to select this keyboard looking thing, and we can jog the location of the machine. And also the Z-axis goes up and down with this tab. The arrow keys on the keyboard also correspond to these 4 keys, and the page up, page down will lift the Z-axis up and down. We can input a value into the location indicator here and hit go to, and it will go to that spot. For the moment, I'm going to close this out. And I'm going to start by homing out the X and Y 0. So X and Y 0, the home command is this this tab here. After the Space Invaders noises, it will use proximity switches to go to the machine X and Y home positions. Takes a moment. And you can see the G-code running in the background. And then we'll say OK. So the next thing we want to do is touch off our Z height location. Now I've already double-sided taped my pink foam piece to the table. And I've decided to use pink foam because I didn't have any wood available when I started making this video. So to touch off the Z location, I'm going to need to navigate using the keyboard tab. I need to navigate the router bit above the material. I'm going to go ahead and lower it down using page down till I'm about ½ an inch above. And we're going to use our touch-off plate. Place it underneath. Close out the keypad, and select this Z touch-off. It's going to ask us to make sure the plate is actually below the bit, and I will confirm and say OK. When I do this, I'm keeping my hand close to the space bar just in case anything goes wrong. That will pause the operation. And it's given us a prompt to remove the plate or put the plate back in its position. So now we have our X, Y, and Z all touched off, the Z to the top of the material. And my X and Y are in the lower left-hand corner of the part. So before I run our program, I want to go and I want to check Fusion and make sure that that's consistent with what I have in the program. So I have the part open, and I've already gone and modified the part to reflect the thicker material that I'm using. But now I'm going to check my first setup, and we'll be milling the top side here. So I orient it to see where my X, Y, and Z are. And I should be good on the XY, except I touched off to the corner instead of the center of the material. So I'm going to go ahead and change that. I will right click, edit. I'm going to use this stock point tab to move that to this corner. The other thing I was worried about was that my material would be too short for the X and in the Y direction, but I'm actually within range of the size material I put on there. So I'm good there, and I'm going to select OK. And now I get an error message here. So I'm going to need to rebuild this toolpath. And if I go to Actions and Generate, it will regenerate that toolpath. And I'm going to select this. I'm going to repost it out. G1, G2. And I will save it over a previously created bottom plate. Okay. And so now I'm ready to run the program. The first time you run a program, you want to run it above the material just to make sure that it's in the general location. So what I'll do is select cut part. I'm going to select my bottom plate program, open that. And in this command pad, we can change our offset, our 2D, 3D offset to a 3D offset. And what that's going to do is that the bit is going to ride an inch above the material, and it's just to make sure that we're generally in the right spot. So now I will select Start, Space Invaders, and I need to turn the spindle on. There's a green button at the console. Select OK. I'm going to keep my hand on the space bar. And right off the bat, I noticed that I'm not on the material. So I'm going to need to make an adjustment. I'm going to pause. By hitting the space bar. Select Quit. And I'm going to use this 00 home tab key to rapid traverse back to home. And I can see that it's back at the machine 00 home. So I'm going to check one more time my setup. That looks right. So I believe what happened was when I started the machine, I was not at the 00 home, XY home. So where I started from, that's what it interpreted as the 00 start point. Because my program looks good, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to try it one more time with the 3D offset. So I'll select Cut, bottom plate, open, 3D offset, start. Turn the spindle on, okay. So now we can see that it's in the correct location. And I want to make sure that my rough part is big enough to fit my bowl, and it looks like it is. So I'm satisfied with where that's at. I'm going to go ahead and press spacebar, quit the program, use the 00 tab to go back to 00, and now I'm ready to run. As I start to run this, I will note that I've removed the dust collection shroud, so we're going to get a lot of pink foam. Typically, we would definitely want to use the dust collector in this situation. And I'm also going to be standing by the spacebar or the emergency off just in case something goes wrong. Bottom plate, open. So now we'll do no offset. We'll just go to Start. Turn the spindle on. Okay. Okay, so now I will jog the head away, making sure I don't bump into my part. I'm going to blow the part off a little bit. And start to remove the part. The foam is a little fragile, so I don't want to destroy it taking it off. And I'm going to pull the double-sided tape off. And the next thing we're going to do is going to run our fence program. Before I do that, I will need to change the bit. So with my part off the table, I'm going to drag the machine back over. And I'm going to lift it up a little bit. And now I'm going to change the bit. To access the wrenches, they're on the side of the machine, and it automatically turns the spindle off, so it can't turn on while we're doing this. So loosen the collet nut, slide that bit out, and the reason we're changing the bit is to use a flat bottom bit. So when we make our fence, we don't have a little ridge, little fillet at the bottom. Put the wrenches away, turn the spindle back on. And before I set up to run, I'm going to check Fusion again. I always have Fusion open to double check what my plans are. So I can see here again that we're located in the center of the part, and that's kind of difficult to touch off to. So actually for this, it's not too difficult, but I'm going to go ahead and keep it put it back to the edge. So I'm going to edit and stock point in this lower left corner. Say OK. I can select my setup and do Control G, and that will regenerate everything in the setup. So I'm looking at my fence cut again, and I'm looking to see where I'm touching off. So I got to retouch off this flat bottom bit to the top of the material. So I'm going to select the fence cut, G1, G2, after I've made my adjustments, and send out the fence cut. Save it on top, say OK. Now my fence, I'm going to locate the fence, instead of the part being here in the corner, I'm going to bring it over about 10 or 12 inches in the Z direction. So to do that, I'll open up our keypad, and I want to be in the Y direction 10 inches. So let's say go to, and in the X direction, I want to be at X0. I could have put 0 and 10, and it would have gone to both points, just so you know. And that will be my new XY0. I'm going to close this, and I want to save. I go to the 0 tab here, and XY0, and that creates that point. You can notice that in our positions tab now that's 0, 0. So now I need to jog this forward a little bit, And I'm going to touch off my Z. So I'll take the foam that I'll be using, and these are going to be my fence components. They're just a couple strips of foam that I have some double-sided tape on. I'm just going to lay them down on the table and set my touch plate on top of them. And I'm going to jog that down just to make sure that I'm on top. Looks like I am. So now I will run my X or my Z touch off. Okay. So now our Z is established. We'll say okay. I'll put everything away. I'm going to remove these from the table. I'm going to jog back to our 0, 0 point. I'm going to go ahead and run the program above the table like we had done before. So this is going to be fence cut. Select a 3D offset. Start. Follow the prompt, so turn the spindle on. Okay. And that's looking pretty good. It's a fairly short program, so I'm going to let it run out, and I'm going to bring it back to XY, or yeah, XY 0. Go ahead and run the program. And I'm going to be looking for it to score the table. Follow the prompts. So it's not quite scoring the table. I'm going to make a modification in Fusion so I can see where it's cutting. So I'm going to go back into Fusion, right click on the fence cut, edit. I'm going to come to the heights tab. I'm going to drop this down another 0.01, so it'll be minus 0.02. Select it again, export it, fence cut, save. I have to make sure I go back to the home position. And I'm going to start my program. Spindle's on, okay. It's still not quite touching, so I'm going to drop it down a little bit more. Go to edit, heights, select it, post, fence cut, go back to home. Still not touching. One more time. Now it's starting to score the table. It still needs to come down a little bit more. So I want to make sure I can see it clearly where it's cutting. And this, the issue I could be having is that the thickness of my double-sided tape is pretty thick. And so my 1 inch value that's in Fusion is no longer valid. But I do it in small increments so I don't put a huge gash into the table. Back to it. I actually started too soon. I need to bring it back home first. Back to my fence cut. Now we should have a visible line that we can reference from. I'm going to jog this away now. I'm going to use the keyboard tab, move it over so I have room. And I'm going to use, to blow it off a bit, lightly sand the area. And I'm going to mark it with a Sharpie so I know where my part's going. And now my fence pieces, I'm going to remove the double-sided tape. And I want my fence pieces to just slightly overlap that score line. Make sure it's held in place. And this works well with wood or foam or plastic. So it's just slightly overlapped. I'm going to bring the head up just a little bit to make sure I'm clearing the material. And I'm going to bring it back to the current home position. I'm going to run that program. Start the spindle. It's going to create a fence for us to locate our part to. I'm going to move this, jog the head out of the way. Blow off our area. And I'm going to test fit the part just to make sure that it fits in there nicely, it just seems to. Sometimes you get a little bit of burr. We can use our sanding block. If we want a more exact fit, lightly sand the two mating edges. Yeah, that seems to fit exactly in there. So now I'm going to put a little bit of double-sided tape to hold this part. And I'll just tear off a small piece. It's going to go in there that way. So place it on there, push it down a little bit, peel it away. And drop it into place. Make sure it's held in place. Okay, so our X, Y, and Z are already established, or actually our X and Y are established. We don't want to change those, but we're going to need to change out the bit because the bit we're using to sculpt with is a different bit. It's this bullnose bit here. So I'm going to close that, and I'm going to use my keypad here to jog everything over. I'm going to lift up the head. I'm going to change out the bit. So disengage the spindle. Loosen the collet nut. Tighten that. The wrench is back. And now I need to touch off the Z one more time. So I'm going to jog over to be on top of the material. Bring the head down a little bit. Put the plates in place. And touch off the Z. Okay, put everything away. Want to make sure that I'm at the XY zero. And I'm going to run the bowl cut program with our 3D offset just to make sure that everything's in the right spot. Turn the spindle on. And it's definitely not in the right spot. So I'm going to quit. I'm going to bring it back to XY00. And what I had done before was I made an adjustment to our setup, and I reposted the fence cut, but I did not repost the bowl cut. So I'm going to select my bowl cut, G1, G2, post, bowl cut, save on top of that one. And we're at 0, 0, so I'm going to go ahead and start it. Bowl cut, open. I'm going to use the 3D offset again. And turn the router on. Okay. That looks much better. So it's always good to do the 3D offset because I would have had to start an entirely new part a couple times if I had not. Okay, so I'm going to use the space bar to pause. And we'll quit that. We're going to rehome. It's important to note that if I accidentally select this XY home, that's going to bring it back to the original machine home, not our current home. And we would have to go back to our offset of 10 inches along the Y and reset that home. So when I do offsets, I try and use numbers I can remember, or I write it down. So I'm going to go ahead and start this program. Bowl cut, open, start, turn on the spindle. Okay. It looks to be starting out pretty good. The step over and step down that we chose is more in line with wood. It's super excessive for foam, so I could speed the program up quite a bit by increasing the step over and step down. Foam is really easy to sand out all the cut lines. Now the program's over, you can lift up the head and jog it away. Blow off the table a bit. And try and release the part without damaging it. Foam is a little bit fragile. And we have a bowl tray kind of thing.